From Kern Government Television, welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting, originating from the County Administrative Center located at 1115 Truxton Avenue, Bakersfield, California. Kern County's vision is to create and maintain a customer-centered county government designed to garner the confidence, support, and trust of the people we serve. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the afternoon session. Today is Tuesday, June 25th, 2019. Board to reconvene. First item on the afternoon agenda is roll call.
Supervisor Gleason.
Here.
Supervisor Scribner.
Excuse me, here.
Supervisor Maggard.
Here.
Supervisor Couch.
Here.
Supervisor Perez.
Here.
Next item is a report on actions taken in closed session. County Council.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board. During closed session, your board met on items 70, 71, 72, 73, and 74. There are no reportable actions.
Thank you. The next item is the consent agenda. All items listed with a C or a CA above the item number are considered to be routine and non-controversial by county staff. We can act on those all in one motion. I'm going to tell you what's on the consent agenda in a second, but this is the time if you'd like to make a comment on any of those items, or ask for separate consideration on any of those items. Now's the time to do that. Consent agenda starts on page 2 of the afternoon agenda. It consists of item 5 on that page. On to page 3, all the items 6 through 9. Page 4, items 10 through 13. Page 5, all the items 14 through 19. Page 6, item 20 has been withdrawn by staff. And I need to read a correction into item 25, but it's all the items on page 6, excluding item 20, 21 through 26, and item 28. And on item 25, the third line down, instead of it saying July 10th, it needs to read June 30th. On to the next page, which would be page 7. It's all the items 29 through 37. On page 8, all the items 38 through 43. On page 9, it's items 46 through 49. Item 44 has been withdrawn by the department also. Page 10, all the items 50 through 55. Hang on one second. I'm just reading what they are, and then we'll do that. On page 11, it's item 56 through 60. Those are all the items that are on the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, did I get that right? Everything done I needed to? Sir, you'd like to hear item 10 separately, or you want to make a comment on item 10?
I just want to make a comment on it.
Okay. Let's get you a microphone. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay.
And I've never done this before, so you'll have to bear with me.
That's okay.
I have some things on, I guess it's number 10, that I would like to address, and I have a couple other people with me that are concerning this item and the amounts of I'm sorry, I'm just nervous.
That's okay.
So I need to have a forum to speak at so I can get some answers. The two people that took care of things, I was in the VA hospital for about 6 months, and I try to handle these things from code compliance, and they were, every time that code compliance requested that we do one thing out there, they were responsible for it, and they handled it. And then next month we'd come back and they'd want something else done, which we, at every time, we complied with their whatever they were asking us to do, and we had done that over and over and over and over. And so these people were more involved into taking care of it than I was, because they took care of while I was in the hospital.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
this address is in my district, and so I'll request that item 10 is pulled
Okay,
for separate consideration.
we're gonna hear that. We're not gonna vote on that. We're gonna hear that as a separate item in just a moment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll return it to the board for a motion on the consent calendar, and I'd ask that motion include that we adjourn as the Board of Supervisors and reconvene as the Kern Sanitation Authority.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Hang on just a second, Mr. Nicolai. We're going to get there. We're now sitting as the Kern Sanitation Authority. There's one item on that agenda under the consent calendar. It's item 1 on page 2. Is there anyone here that would like to make a comment on the consent agenda item under the Kern Sanitation Authority agenda? Seeing none, I'll return to the board, ask for a motion on the consent calendar for Kern Sanitation Authority and to adjourn as the Kern Sanitation Authority and reconvene as the Ford City Taft Heights Sanitation District.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
We're now sitting as the Ford City Taft Heights Sanitation District. There's one item. It is item 2 on page 2 that is on the consent agenda for that agenda. Is there anyone here that would like to make a comment or speak to that item? Seeing none, I'll return to the board and ask for a motion on the Ford City Taft Heights Sanitation District consent agenda and to adjourn as such and to reconvene as the Board of Supervisors.
So moved.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. Mr. Nicolai, we have just a couple other items and we'll get to item 10. Okay. We're now to item 3, that is public presentations. This portion of the meeting is reserved for people to address the board on any matter that is not on the agenda but is under the jurisdiction of the board. Is there anyone here that would like to make a public presentation? Yes, ma'am. Anyone else? Thank you. Afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name's Sonia Bennett. I have worked for the county for 25 years and happily transitioning into retirement in July.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm also a member of SEIU 521. So I was here this morning, and there was some things that I think were kind of misconstrued and some other things that I'd like to highlight. So demand for public services continue to increase. Kern County is experiencing a safety crisis not only for the Sheriff's Department, but for other departments such as the Department of Human Services, CPS, social workers in particular. This is hurting both children and families. We've doubled the state average for recurrence of allegations in CPS. We're 36% higher than the state average in child maltreatment allegations. We do not have enough CPS social workers today, and they are leaving the county, just like our friends in the Sheriff's Department. They're leaving at an alarming rate. We can't keep butts in the seats to provide services. They're leaving to go to nonprofits where they get better pay. Yes, we had one leave recently to go work for the superintendent of schools on a program the department funded. That's not a nonprofit. No, it isn't. You're absolutely right. But we do have them going to Kern Bridges and other places. Yeah. It was interesting because we actually met with some of the other county unions last week, and I spoke with Mr. Anderson at KLEA, and he shared an interesting story with me that they were actually out in a situation where they needed to call CPS to come pick up a couple of children. They didn't have anybody to go out and pick up the kids. Our social workers carry car seats to transport children. Sheriffs, they don't have that luxury. They don't have the room in the back. And they actually had to send somebody out to go pick up a car seat, and hopefully it was the right one. If not, that means they're making trips back and forth. So issues within other departments, such like CPS, affects our sheriff's department. We all work together. While the county is adding these positions, the reality is that the department can't keep up with the current allocated staff positions. The department can't even recruit enough workers to fill our next human service technicians class. Over 654, or 14%, of employees currently represented by SEIU have less than 1%, or excuse me, have less than 1 year of service. Given the high level of skill and on-the-job training required for many of these positions, this represents a significant reduction in functional capacity and a high financial cost to the county for recruitment and training. Earlier today, the CEO made a comment regarding raises and step increases. I wanted to point out that a person hired at an A step will only get 4 more years of increases, which is represents a 20% as opposed to 25% increase. And that's also why we've advocated for an F step to be included, like the detention officers. While we do have classifications that received increases based on trailing behind comparable counties, most workers have not received increases for 12 years. Many, like me, are taking home less money today than I did 12 years ago, when the county and during that time, the county's added $71 million to reserves. Stagnant wages, increased workloads, and poor working conditions are why those with experience and knowledge are leaving. The county is spending millions in training and recruiting. We've prepared this handout, and you may have gotten copies earlier. The information we got for these was obtained through the county website. We prepared the handout and for you and the public about why we need a budget that invests in our workers, communities, and families. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bennett. Any other public statements? Next item is board member announcements and reports. Seeing none of those, go over to item 10. Mr. Anand?
Good afternoon, Chairman Couch and members of the board. This item is requesting your board to conduct a hearing to confirm costs associated with abatement work that has been completed by the county. This property is owned by Michael Nuckley, which was determined by this office to constitute a public nuisance under Kern County Ordinance Code Chapter 844, and in violation of several sections of Kern County Ordinance Codes. The property owners was notified that a public nuisance existed on the subject property and was provided a description of the nuisance. The owner of the property was given a reasonable time period to abate the violations and was notified of their right to appeal. The property owner failed to comply with notice and orders which were mailed on March 7, 2016, and April 26, 2016, and was posted on the property on April 7, 2016. In addition, a final notice was sent to the property owner on March 13, 2017, and posted on the property on June 15, 2017, to which there was still no effort on the part of the property owner to abate the violations. Therefore, the Public Works Department abated those violations in accordance with the County Ordinance Code, Chapter 844. The notice and orders to the property owner informed them that if they failed to abate the nuisance and the county was required to abate the nuisance, all costs associated with the abatement would be assessed against the property and could be collected as a special assessment on the tax bill. Staff issued administrative penalty in the amount of $250 in an effort to encourage the property owner to abate the violations. There was still no effort on the part of the property owner to abate the nuisance. On or about October 16, 2017, abatement work was performed at the property by the county. The work consisted of removing trash, junk, debris, and other miscellaneous items on the property. A notice of protest hearing on proposed confirmation of administration penalties and costs for abatement work and statement of verified expenses was prepared for this project, showing a total cost of $2,565.40. Included in the notice of protest hearing was a statement that your board would consider these costs at today's hearing. The notice of protest hearing was posted on the property on June 4th, 2019, and was mailed to the property owner in accordance with Kern County Ordinance Chapters 844 and 854. Staff has reviewed the environmental effects of this enforcement action and has determined that the enforcement action is exempt from further CEQA review. This concludes our comments, and we are here to answer any questions that you may have, or you may want to open the hearing and listen to the owner or the owner's representative. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll open the public hearing, sir, and now's the time for you to tell us a bit more. Thank you.
I've got a couple things that I want to point out. This property, the said property that we're talking about, was in the Nikolai Family Trust. I did not receive the ownership of said trust until the 17th, or 2017. And before that, it was in the Nikolai Family Trust, and the trustee is Donald F. Nikolai. My mother passed on, and that piece of property was deeded, or was granted to me through the trust. And when the only notices that we got, and we did get one in 17, or two in 16? 2016 and 17. Yeah, and at that time, I hired a local contractor to help haul away to the local landfill anything that was suspect or was asked of us to do, as for tearing down corrals and everything else. They never asked us to do that. We just did it because we thought that that was part of the complaint. We never did understand who filed the complaint. I think that in order for a finger of guilt be pointed at me, it's not right, because nobody was ever said who filed the complaint, and I think you have to have somebody file a complaint. And I have worked with Mr. Rojas and Mr. Deere. Mr. Deere has gone out of his way to try to alleviate and make us understand what was required of us. And every time that 1 month to the next changed, we did everything that was asked of us to be done in the way of clearing rubbish out or wherever it was that was required from 1 month to the next. And it seemed to change. We'd do one thing and get it done. Mr. Deere would come and say it was all right, and then come back a week later and say, we want this done. So it was a constant, ongoing confusion. So we never knew if we were doing the right thing. And again, I ended up in the VA hospital for quite a few months. Tyler Butler, and I'd like to have her speak on this, was part of the people that helped me clean up when I wasn't there. She tried to meet with Mr. Deere and Mr. Rojas and tried to accomplish what they had asked them to do. So I would like to let her speak because she has more of an idea of what was asked and what was done. And her name is Tyler Butler.
Tyler Butler, thank you.
Hi, thank you. I'll just make this really short and sweet as possible here. I have a letter here that, a copy of a letter that I sent to Robert Deere on March 7th of 2016, which was shortly after we received our first complaint about being a public nuisance. And I might add that this property is out in a section of Tehachapi called Mountain Meadows, which is, I don't even know if it's part of the city or not, actually. It's unincorporated, I do believe. We have no neighbors. We're out in the middle of nowhere. So the public nuisance part for me is actually kind of an issue, but anyway. In this letter, I addressed each and every violation that was listed in the initial complaint and said that we are more than happy to comply and that we obviously don't want to be known as a public nuisance. And so we then went through, we met with Robert Deere and went through each and every violation and what we needed to do in order to come into compliance. We did that. And then, as Michael said, after we were done with that, we would have another meeting where he could come and sort of sign off on what we'd done. And then more issues would seem to come into play at that point. And it was sort of a moving target. But we did, in fact, happily and, with enthusiasm, we did everything they asked of us. And in fact, at the end, when it was determined that they needed everything cleared off, we actually hired a guy to come in and clear everything that was said needed to be cleared, and we did that. He took everything to the dump or to the storage or wherever it needed to go, and he actually ran into a gentleman that was there per the county to do the cleanup. And when he came and saw the property, he said, "Oh, the work's already done. I don't need to do it." And he called the office at that point and said, "This job's already been done. I don't need to make a bid on it because there's nothing here for me." And so to say that we didn't, comply or that we didn't in some way do this work is just preposterous. I mean, we really did. We bent over backwards to make sure that this was taken care of and that every step of the way we stayed in contact with code enforcement, and we did, in fact, clear the whole property, including my animals, which were taken. That was never an issue. So, but that's for another day, I guess. That my animals were taken from the property.
Without
Nothing. They just took them.
And they just took them, and that
Wasn't even ever an issue. So
it wasn't an animal.
anyway, the main issue here is that this $2,565.40. I'm not sure. I see that it's broken down here into administrative costs and various other costs, but I can't see it having, I mean, we did all the work ourselves. We did.
And we paid John.
Yeah, and we paid to have it hauled per, private person to come
For
take
what
things.
What they requested.
And we did everything they asked. We took everything off that property that was asked. It's empty now. Which I don't think was really something that had to happen that way, but anyway, that's all I wanted to say, was that we did in fact comply. We paid to have it done. The gentleman that came there to do it said it was already done and he didn't need to make a bid to the county to do it. And now we get hit with this $2,500 abatement fee, which I can't imagine what it's for, since we did it.
I don't mind paying a fair, whatever my costs. I've never avoided paying my bills or anything else. And, I'm open to paying whatever is reasonable. But when we do all the work and somebody else takes the glory, I don't think that's right. And all I'm asking for is a reasonable shake on this deal. It's if I paid to do something, I live and die by my last name, which is Nikolai. And as my father hounded into us kids, that was the only thing that we had was our word on our last name. So I will leave this up to you, gentlemen. I've said everything I could, that as honestly as I could from my point of view. And I do appreciate you taking the time for me, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Any others that would like to speak? Nothing to add?
No, there's not, sir.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no others, I'll close the public hearing and return it to the board. Supervisor Scrivener.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Nikolai and Ms. Butler, for your comments. Just to address a couple of things that questions you had in regards to how the complaint was generated. We only operate once with code enforcement, code compliance, when we do receive a complaint. But those complaints are kept anonymous. We don't release the name of who generated the complaint because we don't want neighbors retaliating against neighbors, which it still happens from time to time because sometimes I think people have a pretty good idea of who turned them in because maybe they had some issues with the neighbor before. And so it still does happen, but we try to prevent that from happening by keeping it anonymous. This is county unincorporated, obviously, that's why you're here. And we still do have standards. We just still do have rules as far as how properties need to be maintained. And so the complaint was issued to the department, and we acted upon that complaint. Mr. Rojas, I see you in the audience. Would you mind joining Mr. Anand? I have some questions probably for both of you. So I'll give you a minute to come up. But basically, when I was looking at this, I see here we are in June of 2019 dealing with an abatement for a property that was first noticed for a violation back in March of 2016, so over 3 years ago. This has been going on. Two notices by mail on March 7th, 2016, and again on April 26th, and then the property was posted of the nuisance on April 7th of 2016. Then a year later, final notice was mailed March 13th, 2017, and final notice posted June 15th, 2017. And so we went out, we did the work, and now we are faced with recouping our costs, which is our staff time and also the time for the contractor that we sent out there to do the removal of all the material that we deemed needed to be abated. And so, normally I would say, well, you were noticed 3 years ago, again, a year after that. Here we are in June, we've done the work, and so the taxpayers need to be reimbursed for their costs that they put out to do this. But the thing that I want to get to the bottom of is the statement from Ms. Butler and Mr. Nicolai that they did the work. And so why did we go out and abate the property? And so that's what I need from you, Mr. Rojas, is to explain to me how this all transpired, if they were speaking with Mr. Deere in your department, if someone ever signed off on the work that they did. It doesn't sound like maybe the claim is a contractor that went out there, said there isn't any work to be done. So that's what I'm looking to you for, is what was on that property that needed to be abated when we did finally go out and do that work. And it looks like the work was done in October of 2017. October 16, 2017, Public Works abated the nuisance.
Supervisor Scrivener, through the chair, we don't disagree that the property owner did do some work, significant amount of work, as a matter of fact, enough to cause us to rebid the project when we got down to the abatement. Yes, we were sympathetic to his situation. We tried to work with him. A little bit of progress did occur, probably not as fast as we would like, but it was progress nonetheless. And as time went on, we got to the point where we reached the point in time where we would proceed with our abatement. We solicited the bids of a couple of contractors. A little bit of time passed. We revisited the site and we saw that they were continuing with work, but not to the point of complete abatement. There was still some stuff left on the property. And we did have communication, I believe, with a mark that was working for Mr. Nicolai, and we informed him that there were still issues on the property. At that time, we solicited bids again and got pricing once more. The cost of abatement was not major. It was $999, so there wasn't a lot left on the property, but it needed to be abated in order for us to have complete abatement.
So essentially, they were doing work. It wasn't, as I said, this was 3 years ago when this all started. So for 3 years, and I would imagine that you probably had questions from some of the neighbors or whoever had issued the complaint. Why hasn't this been done? We put this complaint in 3 years ago. The property still isn't cleaned up. And so finally, staff decided that, look, we're just going to go in and finish it up. Is that essentially what happened?
Supervisor Scrivener, through the chair, typically when a complaint comes in, if you have a party that keeps on top of it, obviously usually we wouldn't let it go this long. But sometimes when we receive a complaint from a complaining party and you explain to them what the situation is, what the plight of the property owner may be, sometimes they're not, well, their urgency isn't there. In other words, they understand that they're working to try to solve it, and sometimes they're okay with giving them a little more time to solve the issue. In this particular case, this party was given a lot of time to solve the issue. Yes, we get to a point where the questions start coming again. Okay, are we anywhere closer to having this thing solved? And we have to be able to respond to that.
Had we moved forward with abatement earlier, sooner, rather than giving Mr. Nicolai and the family an opportunity to clean up some of this on their own, I imagine that this assessment would be a tremendous amount higher with the material that was originally on the property.
Supervisor Scrivener, through the chair, that is correct. Some of the original numbers that we were looking at were in the $6,000 range. I think that in working with the property owner, we were able to again extend this out and get it to a more reasonable price, but because of all the work that they have done. But to answer your question, yes, typically we would go at a much faster pace. Usually within 90 days, we start considering abatement for a property that is not being addressed.
Okay. Well, from my perspective, I think we worked with the property owner to an appropriate extent. Sounds like you probably went even longer than you normally would because of circumstances. And I appreciate the fact that staff does look at every situation individually and tries to work with the property owner. Obviously, this is a sympathetic case, but the fact remains that the taxpayers of the county have expended funds in order to abate this nuisance, and those funds need to be recouped. And so for that reason, I will make a motion on staff's recommendation. Thank you.
Don't have any other lights on.
I'll second it.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't hit my button in time. I'll second it too.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I would just refer, it's Mr. Nicolai. I would see our staff before you leave to talk about the upshot of this. Yes, I will. Thank you. And options for you. Thank you. You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. That was item 10. That takes us over to item 27. County Administrative Office, this is a proposed resolution authorizing the execution of an indemnification agreement with Kern Valley Healthcare District and other documents required by the Governor's Office of Emergency Services.
Chairman, Mr. Christensen and my office will handle this item.
Mr. Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Alan Christensen for the presentation. This item is to request your board adopt the attached resolution authorizing the county staff to apply for a funding application to the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services, or Cal OES, for a hazard mitigation grant in the amount of $19,272,000. Kern Valley Healthcare District approached the county sometime back to ask if we would apply for a grant on their behalf for hazard mitigation funds that would benefit the residents of the Kern River Valley. Kern Valley Healthcare District provides healthcare services in the greater Kern Valley region. The grant funding made available through Cal OES comes from FEMA. So it's passed through from FEMA to Cal OES and granted to local agencies. The county is proposing to apply for these funds on behalf of Kern Valley Healthcare District to address the risks of a seismic event occurring that could happen in Kern County. Approximately $6.886 million would be expended for soft costs such as design, permits, project management, inspection, and testing. The remaining $12,386,000 would be dedicated for construction of seismic upgrades to the hospital building and installing a new emergency electrical generator system. Kern Valley Healthcare District operates a rural district hospital that provides emergency services, acute care, imaging, surgery, and skilled nursing services to all the communities that surround Lake Isabella. If the hospital is not seismically upgraded, it could be closed by the California Department of Licensing and Certification in the year 2030. This would leave the residents of Kern River Valley with no medical care. Kern Valley Healthcare District cannot apply for the grant through Cal OES because it is not a qualified agency within the Kern County Hazard Mitigation Plan. Since Kern County has a hazard mitigation plan, we can serve as the grantee, and the healthcare district would be the sub-grantee, so it's a pass-through grant. As a condition of the grant, Kern Valley Healthcare District commits to perform all administrative work related to the application, including ongoing grant reporting and compliance. The district also commits to provide 25% local match. That match amount is $4.818 million from their funds, which is required for the grant. Lastly, the district will indemnify the county for any and all claims related to application, administration, compliance, design, construction associated with the improvements. County councils approved the indemnification agreement and related grant documents. Therefore, it's recommended that your board adopt the resolution. authorizing execution and delivery of an indemnification agreement with Kern Valley Healthcare District, and authorize the county administrative officer to sign all other grant-related documents. Tim Maglue, the CEO of the district, is here, as well as some other interested parties, I believe. If you choose to have them speak, I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Christensen. Why don't we open it up? If there's anyone here that would like to make a comment on this item, now's the time to do it. Just state your name and proceed, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Tim Maglue. I'm the CEO of Kern Valley Healthcare District. As you may be aware, all hospitals in the state of California are required to come in seismic compliance with their hospitals by the year 2030 or risk being closed. Kern Valley Healthcare District has tried 4 separate times through our community to get either a GO bond passed or a parcel tax measure passed to get the funding done to make this a reality. We have reached out to numerous agencies. Through USDA, we actually received a grant 2 years ago, or a loan 2 years ago, but it was predicated again on the fact that the community needed to support it with a 67% approval rating. We were not able to achieve that. California Hospital Association notified us roughly about 2 or 3 months ago that there was FEMA funds that were made available to a number of the counties here in California as a result of the fires that occurred last year. As a part of that process, that grant process, it was identified that those funds would also be available to non-designated counties that could also be used for seismic upgrades to the hospitals. The hospital submitted a notice of intent to apply for those funds. We received back a favorable letter from Cal OES indicating that our project met their requirements and would be movable for funding. As Mr. Christensen said, the problem we had was that the hospital could not directly apply for those funds, and therefore we needed to seek out the county's help in making sure that we could get that funding to happen. And so I request, obviously, approval from the board to make this happen. Like I said, this is probably not going to happen, the upgrades to the hospital, without this FEMA money. Again, our ability to get, with the financial situation of our county up there, of the residents that live there, probably unable to get a bond measure passed of any kind, or a tax measure. And so, again, this is critical to the hospital, obviously, in making sure that this happens. Is there any questions that I can answer for the board?
I don't see any, but thank you. If you stay close, you might get some.
Thank you very much for your.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Karen Williams, and I live in Lake Isabella. Since Senate Bill 1953 was signed into law in 1994, nearly every hospital in California has struggled to meet the mandated yet unfunded seismic requirements. Kern Valley Healthcare District is no exception. The 2030 deadline is looming large. The Kern Valley Healthcare District has gone to the voters several times with different ways to finance the required seismic retrofitting. However, due to the cost each property owner would face over a long period of time, these plans all failed to pass. Kern Valley Healthcare District now has the possibility of obtaining the needed funds in the form of a California OES grant, with the district providing an additional 25%. However, the county would need to apply for this grant. Without the required retrofit, our 50-year-old hospital, along with the skilled nursing facility, will probably be forced to close because their license would not be renewed. Not only would an estimated 400 jobs be lost, but the effect on the local community would be catastrophic. I implore you to vote in favor of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Okay, I'll return it to the board for questions, comments, or a motion.
It's my district, so.
I'm sorry, Mr. Supervisor Gleason, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming down and speaking. A couple of key words that Mr. Maglue talked about are critically important for us to understand when we make this vote. That hospital is a critical element of the healthcare system up in the Kern River Valley. It provides a valued function that is very much needed, and without which the trip down that valley, down that road is difficult, challenging, and under emergency situations, it's almost, it's just difficult. So it's a critical component of the community. There's been several efforts in several years to get it funded in other ways. There's not an example of a community looking at a grant saying, there's an opportunity here, let's jump all over this thing. We went through the rigors of trying to find funding where we could pay for it for ourselves. We're not successful at that for a lot of different reasons, but the fact is we've wrung out every possible opportunity to get funding for this hospital. And I just don't think it's possible if we don't get this grant. So I'm vehemently support of supporting this effort, and I think hopefully that we're going to get it all passed today and to apply for the grant. And I'm going to make a motion to support staff's recommendation.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you, Supervisor Gleason. Thank you guys for coming down today. Good luck with that project. I think, I'm cautiously optimistic. That takes us to the end of today's agenda. I need a motion to adjourn at 45? Did I miss one? I'm sorry. 45. Item 45 is a public hearing on a proposed energy services contract consisting of an agreement for design build services and an operation and maintenance agreement. Mr. Hill, how you doing?
Good. Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board. Today is a public hearing on the proposed energy service contract with SunPower Corporation. The purpose of this letter is to conduct a public hearing pursuant to Government Code Section 421710 to consider an energy services contract with SunPower Corporation. The energy service contract consists of two documents, the agreement for design build services and the operation and maintenance agreement, which includes a performance guarantee. This is a project that will save the county considerable sums of money over the term of it. So it's especially today being budget day, at least for the preliminary budget, it's a good thing to bring today. On November 13th, the county issued a request for proposal to construct 2 solar PV systems. It is expected over the 25-year life of the project to save approximately $20 million in reduced power costs. On April 9th, your board approved the award as successful vendor to SunPower, authorizing staff to negotiate the contract terms. While SunPower's proposal offered benefits to the county above and beyond the other proposals, SunPower also requires some terms in its contract documents which are non-standard pursuant to county policy. County staff has worked to negotiate such terms to the extent possible. However, SunPower required some of these terms, and thus the following non-standard terms are included as a part of the contract documents. These are limitations on liability, waiver of warranties, and interest on late payments. Although this contract does not comply with the Administrative Policy and Procedures Manual, and Council cannot approve as to form on that basis, Council would recommend approval based on representations made by the department regarding the benefits to the county and subject to your board's acceptance of the non-standard terms. So therefore, it's recommended that your board open the public hearing on the energy services contract for the new photovoltaic system at Lerdo, receive public comment, close the public hearing, and find that the cost of the county for electrical energy provided under this agreement will be less than the anticipated marginal cost to the county for the electrical energy that would have been consumed in the absence of the agreement, and find that the action is not a project under CEQA, but if determined to be a project, would be exempt from further CEQA review per sections 15061B3, 15301, 15304, 15311, and 15329. And to approve the proposed energy services contract consisting of the agreement for design build services in an amount not to exceed $9,735,937, and the operations and maintenance agreement, and authorize the chairman to sign the energy services contract consisting of the agreement for the design build services for the operation and maintenance. That is the end of my prepared comments. Council is here to answer any questions you may have related to that, and I'm ready to answer any questions you may have related to the contract.
Thank you. Anyone here like to make a comment on this item? Seeing none, return to the board for questions, comments, action. You on good terms with the county council? You have any problem with her?
Yeah, yes, I believe that I'm tolerated, yeah.
Board, what's your pleasure?
Motion on staff's recommendation?
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, all ayes.
Now, can I get a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, July 16th at 9 a.m.?
So moved.
No objection, we're adjourned. Thank you.